arc segments. The line and arc segment tools are used to quickly and easily create individual lines and arcs by dragging. The line and arc segment dialog boxes display the values of the last segment created. We can rest to the default values in the dialog box by pressing Alter or Option and clicking Reset. Star tool. The star tool creates a star-shaped object with a given number of points and size. Drag the pointer in an arc to rotate the star. Shift drag to constrain the tool to multiples of 45 degrees. Hold down Control, that is Windows, or Command, Mac OS. To hold the inner radius constant, hold down Alter, Windows, or Option, Mac OS to keep the sides of the star straight. Hold down the space bar to move the star. Press or hold down up arrow or down arrow to add or delete sides to star. Spiral tool. The spiral tool creates a spiral-shaped object of a given radius and number of winds, that is, the number of turns that the spiral completes from start to finish. Drag the pointer in an arc to rotate the spiral. Shift drag to constrain the tool to multiple of 45 degrees or to the angle specified in the Constraint Angle text box in the General Preferences dialog box. Hold down the spacebar to move the spiral. Press or hold down up arrow or down arrow to add or delete winds. Polygon tool. The polygon tool draws an object with a specified number of sides of equal length, each side being the same distance from the center of the object. We can either draw by dragging on the work area or by entering the value in the polygon dialog box C. Flare tool. The flare tool is used to create flare objects with a bright center, a halo, rays and rings. It is used to create an effect similar to a lens flare in a photograph. Flares include a center handle and an end handle. Use the handles to position the flare and its rings. The center handle is in the bright center of the flare. The flare path begins from this point. Palettes. Color in Illustrator comes in many different forms. Color can be spot colors selected from the color palette, preset colors selected from the swatch palette, or colors as a part of gradient. In Illustrator, colors are generally applied in two ways, as a fill and as strokes. Color palette. Illustrator's color palette is used to apply color to an object's fill and stroke and also to edit and mix colors. This palette can be opened by selecting Window and then Color. We can work with any of the modes available. To change the color model, choose Grayscale RGB, HSB, CNYK or Web Safe RGB from the Color Palette menu. The selected mode will be shown with a tick mark. The colors can be selected from the color bar below. Dragging the sliders till the required color is obtained or by entering the percentage in the boxes provided can also create the color. Swatches palette. As we have seen, we can create any color by sliding the sliders in the color palette, but it is not possible to get the same color or color of the same tint or shade every time. And it is also not possible to remember the percentage value of the shade. To save your previous time, Illustrator comes with a swatch palette. If at all the swatches palette is not visible, then select Window and then select Swatches. But if the window menu display hides swatches, then it means the swatches palette is hidden behind any of the other palettes. Stroke and stroke palette. Stroke palette. The stroke palette has the stroke weight, which determines the thickness of your object. The thickness or the stroke weight of the object can be changed as required. By default, we have a strike weight of 1 point. The stroke weight can be anywhere between 0 and 1000 points. If we need a stroke weight of hairline width, then it would be 0.25 points. Transparency palette. Transparency has two basic functions, namely opacity and the blending modes. The percentage determines the opacity percent of an object to reflect whether an object appears opaque or completely solid. If an object beneath it is invisible, then it is called solid. To change the transparency of the object, Illustrator provides us with a transparency palette. Gradient palette. Gradient palette is used to create and apply gradient to an object's fill. Gradient palette is displayed by choosing Window and then Gradient. There is a gradient fill icon at the top left hand side corner. At the bottom there is a gradient slider from where you can create the gradients. The type of gradient, viz. Linear or radial, can be chosen from the type field. The angle of the gradient can be set. The icons below the color slider are called color stops. The location of the color stop can be specified in the location field. The diamond-shaped icon on top of the gradient bar indicates the midpoint of the gradient. If intermediate colors are to be added to an existing gradient, then clicking just below the slider bar can create a color stop. After selecting the color stop, any color can be dragged and dropped from the swatches palette, or color can be created from the color palette also. Create mesh command. Just like creating mesh with gradient mesh tool, we can create mesh with the create mesh command. With the filled object selected, select object and then select create gradient mesh. The rows in the create gradient